What happens when a young woman fights back against an unjust world, and wins? Elena Harris thought she was just another barista in a forgotten cafe, stuck in a dead-end job. But when a ruthless boss pushes her too far, she makes a bold move that sets off a chain of events that will transform not only her life but an entire community. Secrets, betrayals, and unexpected allies collide in a battle for justice that no one saw coming. Will Elena's small act of defiance spark a revolution, or will it destroy everything she's worked for? This is a story of resilience, heart, and the kind of courage that could change the world. You won't want to miss what happens next. On a chilly February evening in the heart of downtown Ashton, the wind whispered through narrow streets, brushing against the fogged windows of a small cafe tucked between aging brick buildings. Luna's Corner wasn't fancy, just a humble coffee shop where locals came for warmth and quiet, but that night, it glowed like a sanctuary in the cold. Inside, Elena Rivera, a 26-year-old barista with tired eyes and a soft, steady presence, moved with quiet grace behind the counter. Her hair was tied back loosely, strands falling gently around her face, and around her finger was a worn silver ring, one of the few things she had left from her mother, a nurse who had passed away during the pandemic. Despite the cold and the long hours, Elena's spirit never dimmed. There was something in her manner, a quiet empathy, that made regulars feel seen, even if they never said a word. As she refilled a sugar jar and wiped down a table by the window, a sudden gust rattled the glass. Rain began to fall in steady sheets. Elena glanced outside, unaware that tonight, a small decision would change the course of her life, and that of the cafe, forever. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly, a sound Elena had heard countless times, yet tonight it broke through the quiet like a gentle call for attention. A man stepped inside, shaking off rain from a threadbare coat that had clearly seen better years. Water pooled at his feet as he removed his soaked cap and looked around with tired, searching eyes. He looked to be in his late 60s, with a short gray beard and hands reddened by the cold. A heavy backpack slumped off one shoulder, and his boots left wet prints on the wooden floor. Slowly, he made his way to a corner table near the heater and sat down with a groan, rubbing his palms together for warmth. Elena approached with her usual calm warmth. "Evening. Can I get you something hot?" The man hesitated. "Just a cup of tea. That's all I can afford right now." There was no shame in his voice, just resignation. Elena nodded but lingered a second longer, noticing how his eyes flicked briefly toward the pastry display and then to the soup pot simmering gently behind the counter. Without a word, she returned to the kitchen. A few minutes later, she brought over a full tray, a bowl of lentil soup, a slice of bread, and the tea he'd requested. She placed it in front of him with a quiet smile. "This one's on the house tonight," she said. The man looked at her, startled. "I didn't ask for charity." "I know," she replied. "But everyone deserves a warm meal on a night like this." He stared at her for a moment, emotion flickering across his face, surprise, gratitude, perhaps even disbelief. He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Miss Elena. I'm Richard. And thank you, Elena. You have no idea what this means to me." But not everyone in Luna's Corner shared her kindness. From behind the counter, Harold Green, the cafe's owner, had been watching the exchange. A man known for his strict policies and tighter wallet, he stepped forward as soon as Elena returned to her station. "What the hell was that?" he hissed under his breath. Elena stood still. He was cold. He was hungry. "That's not your call to make," Harold snapped. "You give food away, it comes out of your paycheck. We're not running a shelter here." "He didn't ask for anything," she replied, voice firm but calm. "It was my choice. And choices have consequences. Do it again, and you'll find yourself working half shifts, or not at all." With that, Harold stormed back into his office, slamming the door behind him. The cafe returned to its quiet rhythm, but something had shifted. A subtle tension hung in the air, and though Elena continued her work, the look in Richard's eyes stayed with her, a mixture of respect, sorrow, and something unspoken. She didn't yet know it, but that one simple act of kindness had set something much larger in motion. The following evening, the rain had stopped, but the chill remained. The usual hum of Luna's corner filled the space, soft music, clinking mugs, the hiss of the espresso machine. Elena moved quietly through her shift, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Since her act of kindness the night before, Harold had cut her hours. Her Wednesday and Sunday shifts were gone, replaced with silence and a warning. The regulars noticed. A few offered her kind words or knowing looks, but no one dared speak openly. Harold had a way of making people uncomfortable, even if they didn't work for him. Just as the clock struck 8, the bell above the door chimed again. Elena looked up, and there he was. Richard. But something was different. Gone was the weather-beaten coat and the hunched posture. He wore a clean jacket, and his eyes held a quiet confidence. He walked straighter now, less like someone trying to disappear and more like a man ready to be seen. "Elena," he said with a soft nod as he approached the counter. "Mind if I sit?" She smiled, surprised but genuinely pleased. "Of course not. Welcome back." He sat at the same corner table as the night before, and she brought him a cup of tea, on the house again, though this time without hesitation. "I owe you more than tea," he said, warming his hands around the mug. "I've been thinking about that soup and bread ever since. Not because of the taste, though it was good," he chuckled, "but because of the way you treated me, like a person." Elena shrugged modestly. "That's just human decency." "Not everyone agrees," he said, glancing toward Harold's office door. Elena didn't respond. "I wanted to tell you something," Richard continued, lowering his voice. "My name isn't really Richard. It's Benjamin Clark. I used to work in law, specifically, community and veteran rights advocacy. Spent the last 2 decades helping people no one wanted to look at." Elena blinked. "Why? Why hide that? Sometimes you have to step away from the world to understand what it's become," he replied simply. "But last night reminded me there are still people out there worth standing up for." He reached into his coat and pulled out a folder, worn, but neatly organized. "I did some digging today. Your boss, Harold Green. He's been under quiet investigation for labor code violations, wage theft, and a long list of other things. I have contacts at City Hall and at the Labor Relations Board. If you want to do something about this place, I can help." Elena stared at the folder, then at Benjamin. Her heart beat faster. "Why me?" "Because you're the kind of person this city needs more of," he said. "And because you didn't look away." At that moment, something stirred in Elena, hope, yes, but also something stronger, resolve. She didn't know how yet, but she suddenly understood why she had to keep going. The days that followed were a blur of quiet tension and quiet planning. Elena couldn't shake the image of Benjamin's folder, of all the evidence he had gathered on Harold's wrongdoings. Her mind swirled with conflicting emotions. She was grateful for his offer of help, but also fearful. Going up against Harold meant more than just risking her job, it could mean losing everything she had fought for. But it also meant something else, the chance to make a difference. Benjamin had been true to his word. He provided Elena with a wealth of information, legal documents, and even some key contacts who could help if she decided to take action. For the first time, Elena realized just how much power she had, even as a lowly barista. She had the truth on her side, and that truth was something Harold couldn't hide forever. Over the next week, things at Luna's corner became even more strained. Harold continued to cut Elena's hours, leaving her with little time to consider her next move. He was even more insistent about the cafe's rigid rules, refusing to let her offer anything for free, even if it was just a cup of coffee to someone in need. Elena knew she was on borrowed time. Then came a day that tipped the scales. Late one afternoon, Amira Youssef, a young and sharp attorney who worked with Benjamin, showed up at Luna's corner. Elena had seen her once or twice, but they hadn't exchanged more than pleasantries. Amira was there for a reason. "Is Harold here?" Amira asked, scanning the room. Elena nodded and pointed toward Harold's office in the back. She could feel the weight of the moment, as if something was about to unfold. Amira walked straight toward him, with confidence and a purpose Elena couldn't ignore. Moments later, Harold's booming voice echoed through the cafe. "What's this about? Who do you think you are, coming in here and making demands?" Elena's heart pounded as she looked up, trying to catch the words being exchanged. She knew Amira was about to confront Harold with more than just a simple accusation. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Amira's calm voice drifted toward Elena. "Harold Green, you are being investigated for multiple counts of wage theft, labor code violations, and unethical treatment of employees. We have the evidence, and I have already made arrangements to take this to the authorities. You will be held accountable for your actions." Elena felt a sense of relief that she hadn't anticipated. The words hung in the air like a breath finally let go after being held for too long. It was done. It was happening, but that wasn't the only shift in perspective. As Harold stood in stunned silence, his face red with anger, Elena realized something else. This wasn't just about Harold anymore. This was about creating a space where kindness, fairness, and respect could thrive. Luna's Corner was more than just a cafe, it was a place where people could come together, heal, and build something better. As Harold's fate hung in the balance, Elena looked at Amira with a sense of gratitude. She wasn't alone anymore. This was bigger than just her struggle. It was a movement, and it was beginning. The news spread quickly, as these things often do in small towns. Harold's prideful demeanor cracked under the pressure of the investigation, and whispers filled the walls of Luna's Corner. Elena could feel the tension growing with each passing day, as Harold became more desperate, his arrogance replaced with a defensive anger that only deepened his isolation. The cafe that had once felt like a place of comfort for him now became his battleground, but Elena wasn't afraid anymore. Amira's team, along with Benjamin's connections, had pulled the final pieces of evidence together. The hours Harold had tried to cover up, the deductions from employees' wages, and the illegal practices, everything was laid bare. Harold's legal counsel had attempted to negotiate a settlement, but it was too late. The tide had already turned. One evening, just as the sun dipped behind the skyline and the cafe's windows began to glow with the soft, orange light of early evening, Harold called Elena into the back office. His voice, once commanding, now sounded hollow. He looked older, smaller, defeated. "Elena," Harold said, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled a document from his desk. I don't know how to fix this, but I don't have a choice." He dropped the paper in front of her. It was a legal document, one that had been signed by both parties, a transfer of ownership. Elena's eyes widened as she read the terms. It was official. Luna's Corner would now belong to her. "This place," Harold's voice faltered. "It's yours now. The settlement's been reached. The money, the transfer, it's all yours. You've won, Elena." She could barely breathe. The weight of it all seemed to settle on her shoulders, but it was a weight she felt she could bear. All the struggles, the silent battles against Harold's cruelty, had led her here. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was in control of her own destiny. The next few days were a whirlwind. Elena was thrust into the process of becoming the new owner. She met with lawyers, reviewed contracts, and learned more about running the business than she ever thought she'd need to know. Yet, she moved through it with a newfound confidence, as though everything she'd endured had prepared her for this very moment. She didn't waste any time. The first thing Elena did as the owner of Luna's Corner was change the cafe's policies. She introduced fair wages for everyone, established paid sick leave, and ensured that every worker was treated with the dignity they deserved. But more importantly, she made sure that the heart of Luna's Corner, the sense of community, kindness, and respect, was restored. The next morning, the regulars who had been watching this unfold from the sidelines began to filter in, eyes wide with curiosity. Some gave her tentative nods, while others spoke their admiration openly. "You did it, Elena," said one of the older patrons, a woman named Ruth who had been coming to the cafe for years. "You made this place something worth believing in again." Elena smiled, but her thoughts drifted to that moment in the office when Harold had handed her the ownership papers. The journey wasn't over, but it had certainly shifted. From a waitress in the shadows to the owner of Luna's Corner, Elena had taken control of her own future, and in doing so, she had given others the opportunity to do the same. And as she stood behind the counter that morning, her hands steady as she made coffee for the first customers of the day, she realized that this was only the beginning. The days after Elena officially took over Luna's Corner were a blur of meetings, changes, and a sense of purpose she'd never felt before. She wasn't just running a cafe now, she was shaping a community. Slowly, her vision for Luna's Corner began to take root, and it wasn't long before the place felt like something more than just a coffee shop. It became a sanctuary, a place where anyone could come in, share a moment of kindness, and feel like they belonged. Elena made changes small and large. She revamped the menu to include healthier options, made sure the food was sourced locally, and introduced a loyalty program that rewarded regulars with discounts and special treats. The old menu boards, faded and scuffed, were replaced with handwritten signs that made the cafe feel more personal, more inviting. But the biggest change was in the atmosphere. The tension that once hung thick in the air was gone. Employees who had been wary of speaking up before now felt empowered to voice their opinions. Elena's open-door policy made it clear that their concerns mattered. She created a culture where kindness wasn't just a value, it was a requirement. One of the first changes Elena made was to give everyone a raise, not just because it was fair, but because she believed that everyone who worked at Luna's Corner deserved to feel valued. It wasn't just about the money, it was about creating an environment where people felt appreciated for their hard work. One morning, as Elena was wiping down the counter, Amira came in to check on her. The young lawyer, always impeccably dressed and sharp-witted, had become more than just an ally, she had become a trusted friend. "How's it going, boss?" Amira teased, a glint of mischief in her eyes as she sat down at the counter. "It's going," Elena replied with a smile, pouring a cup of coffee. "I never thought it would be this much work, though." Amira laughed, taking a sip of the coffee. "That's because you're actually doing it right. Harold only ever cared about profits. You're building something that lasts." Elena paused, her mind drifting to everything that had happened. In some ways, she still couldn't believe it had all come together so quickly. But in other ways, it felt like it had been inevitable all along. She had always wanted to create a space where people felt seen, where they felt like they mattered. Now, she was doing just that. But there was more to it than just the cafe's success. The change wasn't just in the business, it was in Elena herself. She had transformed from a quiet, uncertain young woman who had once been afraid of standing up for what was right into a strong, determined leader. She no longer hesitated to make the tough decisions, to confront challenges head-on, or to defend the people who needed it the most. Luna's Corner became a hub for the community, a place where artists displayed their work, musicians played in the evenings, and people from all walks of life gathered. The cafe became a symbol of resilience, kindness, and the power of one person's decision to make a difference. And it wasn't just the customers who felt the change. Elena's employees, once disheartened by Harold's harsh rule, began to feel a renewed sense of pride in their work. They took ownership of the cafe's success, too. They were more than just employees, they were part of something bigger. And Elena made sure they knew it. The transformation of Luna's Corner wasn't just a change in the way the cafe operated, it was a reflection of the change in Elena herself. She had found her voice, her purpose, and in doing so, had given others the chance to find theirs. Months passed, and Luna's Corner continued to flourish. What had once been a small, unassuming cafe was now a local landmark, a true symbol of the community's strength and spirit. People came from all over Ashton, not just for the coffee or the food, but for the sense of belonging that Elena had cultivated. It wasn't just a place to grab a quick cup of joe, it was where stories were shared, where bonds were formed, and where people felt safe, heard, and valued. Elena's days were full, but not in the way they had been when Harold ran things. She no longer rushed through her shifts, scrambling to please customers while dodging the cold glare of a boss who cared more about profits than people. Instead, Elena walked through Luna's corner each day with a calm purpose, greeting customers by name, chatting with her staff, and checking in with the regulars who had become like family. One evening, a young woman named Maya, who had started coming in every day after school, approached Elena with a nervous look in her eyes. "Elena," Maya began, her voice wavering, "I don't know how to say this, but Luna's corner has really helped me. I don't have a lot of friends, and, well, things have been tough at home. But coming here makes me feel like I matter. I've started writing again, and I just wanted to thank you." Elena smiled softly, her heart swelling with emotion. "Maya, you're always welcome here. And you do matter. You're more than enough." It was moments like these small but profound interactions, that reminded Elena of why she had done this. Why she had risked everything to take over the cafe, to challenge the status quo, and to build something that wasn't just about turning a profit, but about turning lives around. Every time someone felt seen, heard, and valued, the purpose of Luna's Corner was reaffirmed. As the seasons changed, Elena made it a tradition to host community nights at the cafe, open mic events where locals could showcase their talents, share their stories, or simply connect. These nights grew in popularity, drawing in people who might not have had the courage to speak up before, but who now felt empowered to do so in a space that welcomed them without judgment. One night, a man named Carlos, a former musician who had fallen on hard times, stood in front of the small crowd at Luna's Corner. He had been coming to the cafe for weeks, hesitant to share his music, but Elena had encouraged him each time. That night, he finally stepped up to the mic, and as he strummed his guitar, his voice filled the room with raw emotion. The crowd fell silent, absorbed in the beauty of his song. When he finished, there was a long pause, and then the room erupted into applause. Tears welled up in Carlos' eyes, but he smiled through them. "I never thought I'd play in front of anyone again," he said, his voice trembling. "But Luna's Corner, you made me believe I could." Elena watched from the back, a lump in her throat. This was why she had taken the risk. This was why she had fought so hard. To see people rise, to see them rediscover parts of themselves they thought were lost, to help them find a place where they could thrive, it was all worth it. And in that moment, surrounded by the sounds of the cafe, a mix of laughter, music, and conversation, Elena realized that her journey had come full circle. She wasn't just the owner of a cafe. She was a catalyst for change, a symbol of what could happen when kindness, persistence, and community came together. Luna's Corner wasn't just a business, it was a beacon of hope. And Elena had made that happen. As the years passed, Luna's Corner became more than just a cafe, it became a symbol of resilience, compassion, and the incredible power of small acts of kindness. People came and went, their lives woven into the fabric of the community that Elena had worked so hard to create. Yet, the cafe's soul remained unchanged, rooted in the belief that no act of kindness, no matter how small, ever goes unnoticed. Elena often found herself reflecting on the journey she had taken to get to this point. She thought about the moments when it seemed like everything was falling apart, the days when Harold had treated her like nothing more than an employee, the times when she had wondered if standing up for what was right would cost her everything. But in those moments of doubt, she had kept pushing forward. But more importantly, Elena understood that the lesson wasn't just about overcoming adversity or building a successful business. It was about the people she had met along the way, the ones who had come through the doors of Luna's Corner and shared their stories, their struggles, and their triumphs. It was about learning to see the potential in others, and about understanding that every person, no matter their background, had something valuable to offer. The lesson, Elena realized, was simple: kindness is transformative. In the beginning, she had thought that kindness was just about making people feel good in the moment, that it was something fleeting, like a brief smile or a warm meal. But as she continued to witness the way Luna's Corner had impacted the lives of those who had walked through its doors, she understood that kindness went much deeper than that. It could change people's lives. It could change communities. And it could even change the world. As she watched customers chatting, employees laughing together, and new faces walking in with hope in their eyes, Elena knew that she had created something lasting. Luna's Corner wasn't just a place to get coffee, it was a place where people found support, where they discovered their strength, and where they learned that their actions, their kindness, matter. One evening, Elena sat down at the counter with a cup of coffee in hand. She took a deep breath, watching as the cafe buzzed with life. The work was never over, there would always be challenges, always moments of doubt, but now, Elena knew she could face them. She had built something real, something meaningful, and it had all started with a choice to show kindness when no one was watching. In the end, Luna's Corner was a reflection of her own transformation. It had started as a place of uncertainty, a space of struggle, but over time, it had grown into a beacon of hope, a community where people felt seen, heard, and valued. And that, Elena realized, was the greatest gift she could give the world. The story of Luna's Corner wasn't just her story, it was a reminder to everyone who walked through its doors that kindness has the power to change everything.